Hey guys, John here from Sonic Drive Studio. I hope you're all doing well and welcome back to the channel once again. Apparently, all my amps sound the same again. Let's talk about it for a minute here and feel free to join the discussion in the comment section down below. Let me just start at the beginning, okay? I recently released a video called One Guitar, 53 Amplifiers, and it's basically a shootout of all my amplifiers that I have in my collection here. So that's 53 amplifiers in total. With my wonderful Gibson Les Paul Custom, which I love, and only with dirty tones because who needs clean tones, right? And if you haven't seen that video yet, I urge you to check it out up here or down here because it's just a very cool video, if I may say so myself. It's a lot of fun to be able to hear all these amplifiers side by side, played with an awesome guitar, and you can even skip through the amplifiers with the time codes in the description. So yeah, I really like it. Now, I've done a couple of similar comparisons in the past, and every time when I do such a comparison, there are people in the comments section who claim that they cannot hear a difference between the amplifiers, so all the amps sound the same. And they just can't hear a difference between the amplifiers, and why is that? Well, I think that there are a couple of potential reasons for that, so we're going to talk about that. But first, let's take a listen to a clip of just a couple of these amplifiers side by side, just to give you an idea of how wide range of amplifier tones are in these videos. Okay, let's check it out. Okay, so I assume you guys heard a difference between the amplifiers in that little clip, right? Now, I certainly heard a very big difference between the amplifiers that you just heard, but your mileage may vary. Let me know in the comments down below what you heard. The overall EQ curves of the amplifiers, the structure of the gain, the texture, the amount of gain, the frequency response, the dynamics, etc. And sure, in that big comparison, you will come across a couple of amps that do sound similar. Angle Fireball amplifiers, for example, the 100 and the 25, those are obviously voiced almost the same. A couple of the Marshalls might sound quite similar, a couple of the Oranges as well. But even in those cases, there are differences to be heard. But why do some people not hear those differences? Well, one of the main reasons would be the gear that you are listening on. Trust me, it does not make sense to listen to these types of comparisons on your phone speaker or your iPad speaker or anything like that. The frequency range on those things is very limited, and it's also very far from flat or linear. You probably won't hear a significant difference between most of the amplifiers on such a device. And I figure most of you guys know this already, but I just have to say it. So I do recommend listening on good headphones or good speakers, preferably studio monitors. Now, some of you who couldn't hear a difference did claim that they were listening on good studio monitors or proper headphones. Why is that? Well, if you take a look at how the video was put together, despite the fact that the amplifier changes each time, the drums and bass, so the backing track and the rest of the instruments, remains exactly the same each time. And those instruments do take up a significant space in that mix, of course. Now, I also did an isolated version of that comparison with just the guitars, which you can hear up here or down here as well if you're interested. But to be honest, I prefer the main version, the one with the full mix, so with the drums and with the bass, because in my opinion, it's just important to hear how a guitar sound functions in a whole mix, in a full band mix. How it competes with the other instruments, so to speak. So of course, if those two instruments remain the same across the entire shootout, of course, that's going to play a part in everything sounding sort of the same throughout. But of course, the goal isn't really to listen for those instruments. The goal is for our ears to focus on the texture of the guitar tone alone. Now, if you're just used to playing guitar by yourself in a room without drums and without bass, then of course your ears are trained a little bit differently than when you're used to playing guitar in a full band context, so with drums, bass, and maybe vocals or keyboards. So that is something to keep in mind for sure. However, it doesn't end there, because the guitar parts were only recorded once, or actually twice. I double tracked the parts, put one of them on the right side and one of them on the left side. But then I reamped those parts through every amplifier. I'm not going to play the same riffs for like 106 times over again. I'm not crazy. So I reamped them. So you are hearing the same exact performance each time with each amplifier. But that does have benefits as well, which I will mention in a second. So it's the same guy with the same guitar, with the same hands, the same strings, the same tuning, the same guitar pick each single time. The same pickups as well, of course. And of course, I'm also the person who dialed in the amplifiers, and I have a certain preference for tone as well. And no, I'm not going to put all the amplifiers to noon, because a lot of these amplifiers would sound pretty bad with all the controls at noon. The controls on the amplifiers are meant to be used, in my opinion. That's what they are for. My goal is not here to make amplifiers sound bad. My goal is here to show you guys how you can make an amplifier sound good. However, despite all the factors that I just mentioned, I still can hear a pretty significant difference between all the amplifiers. Most of them, at least. The differences between some of the amps are more subtle than others, of course. Sure, I'll give you that. Now, one of the reasons for that reamping thing is basically that the performance stays very consistent throughout. So the difference that you guys will hear is just the difference of the amplifier. So it really allows you to hear the differences in gain, the differences in distortion character, the overall EQ and frequency response of those amplifiers without being distracted by differences and variances in the playing itself. So because of that consistency, the differences between the amplifier actually gets more clear, in my opinion. It makes it easier for you guys to hear how different they really sound. And of course, also in some cases, it makes it easier for you guys to hear how similar they sound. Because of course, some amplifiers simply sound similar. That's just how they were designed. And no, they do not sound similar simply because of the fact that I used impulse responses instead of a real cabinet. If you don't believe me, look up a recent video that I did with Justin York of York Audio, in which we do a comparison between an impulse response and a real cabinet. And that basically is proof that it doesn't really matter if you use a real cabinet or an impulse response in this case. And one final reason that I want to mention here is that we simply all hear things differently. Some of us just have better hearing. I mean, some of our ears are just better in picking up things. And some of us just simply have more experience in listening than others. More trained ears, basically. And some of us either consciously or unconsciously simply focus on different things when we are listening. And that's all okay, that's all fine, it's nothing to be worried about. And if it does bother you, just simply start by listening through better speakers or better headphones. And maybe use this as an opportunity to train your ears a little bit. Take these videos, listen to the differences between the amplifiers and between the different brands and stuff, and teach your ears where the differences are. And I really think that if you spend a little bit of time there, that you will learn to appreciate the differences between the amplifiers a little bit more. Of course, definitely let me know your thoughts on this subject in the comments down below, because I would love to know. That's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons down below along with the notification bell, as that really helps the channel out. Thank you guys so much. You can also follow Sonic Drive Studio on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you guys so much, and hope to see you very soon. Cheers!